Hello and welcome to this introduction to plants. My name is Siddharth. I'm a researcher. I study plants in the Western Ghats, and through this presentation, I'm going to teach you how to explore the plant world around you. Through this presentation, we'll also cover some new words, some terms. Don't feel too intimidated by it. The main point to remember is that we're trying to identify patterns in plants, and so that's the main take home you need to keep in mind. Okay, so let's begin. So by now you guys should know about the Western Ghats. They are a biodiversity hotspot in South India. They're a hill range which span across the southern range of South India along the west coast. And it's very diverse. Just flowering plants, we have about 4,000 flowering plants. Almost 30% of the 40% of them are endemic, meaning that they're found only here and nowhere else in the world. Of these, about 650 species are trees, more than half of which are endemic. So clearly, they are very. This region is very diverse. There are many plants. We won't be able to talk about all of them in this presentation. So we'll try and figure out some sort of way to break it down so that you can identify plants around your own areas, right? So really important thing for plants is that they need water. And in the Western Ghats, we have a lot of rainfall. It's a very high rainfall region. Most of this rainfall falls in the monsoon months. So we look at this map of rainfall in the region. Wherever we have the hill range, that's exactly where most of the rainfall occurs. The northern sides near Maharashtra get a little drier. The southern sides near Kerala have a longer wet season. So all this rainfall affects plants and the forests around them. So it's good to keep in mind the sort of rainfall or how much water um, is available to plants in a region. So based on all this climate and the landscape, you can have different vegetation types. We'll talk about just three of them, but there are many more types. We'll talk about tropical evergreen forests, moist evergreen forests, montane forests and grasslands, and moist deciduous forests. Don't worry about all these terms. We'll cover what's really important about all this. You can also have other types of forests near the coast. You will find estuaries where you might find mangrove forests, or in some really dry site, you might find thorny, scrubby sort of vegetation, right? So let's talk about moist evergreen forests, or just evergreen forests to be simple. They are what you would imagine a rainforest to be. They have high rainfall, or rather, they're in high rainfall regions. The canopy can be very dense. So sometimes you won't find too much sunlight coming down. They have very tall trees, at least 20 meters. Many trees can be much higher than that. You can find some really big trees in this place. Most of the trees here are evergreen, which means that they don't drop their leaves in summer. You also find a lot of lianas, which are woody climbers. I think you can see some here going up. Uh, you also may not find too many grasses, but it's usually very dense, very wet in the monsoon. And because it's so wet, you'll also find a lot of leeches. So these are generally what evergreen forests are. And as you go up the hill, up the ghat, you'll find that the forests get shorter. You also start finding grasslands on the tops of hills. So this is the montane forest and grasslands. Montane just means mountain or hill, so don't worry about all the terms. Uh, so what's interesting here is the forests here are very stunted. The trees may be more branched. The grasslands are usually on the tops. As you can see, the grasslands on tops of all these hills. Fire comes through the grasslands maybe once a year or once in 2 years. Usually people put fire, and that maintains this dynamic in many ways. If you go higher up the elevation, so above 2000 meters, like in the Nilgiris and things like that, the forests are actually called shola grasslands, and they're slightly different from these they're colder, and the types of species are slightly different. But the general concept is that you have stunted forests in the valleys, and on the tops you have grasses. Then on the drier side of the forest, we have moist deciduous forests. So you can have even more deciduous forests, depends on where you're going. The trees in moist deciduous forest, the trees are tall. The canopy is not completely closed. So you'll find some gaps in the forest canopy. There may be fewer lianas, which are the woody climbers. But the real important difference between these forests and evergreen forests is that there are mainly deciduous trees here in the forest. So, which means in summer, in the dry season, many of these trees will drop their leaves. Also, you won't find as many leeches. You may find more ticks. Yeah. So we just spoke about three types of forest, but actually when you go and visit any of these sites, there's a whole range of things. So between wet and dry, there can be different types of forest in between. So it's just to remember that these are the three things. Is it wet? Is it dry? Are you on a slope? Are you on top of a hill? Are you in a valley? So you have to start to read the landscape. So let's just take an example of this image. If you start down here, it could be really moist and wet, and the trees could be tall. It looks quite dense from this photo. So maybe it's a wet evergreen forest. As you climb higher up the hill, you might find the trees get shorter, they get more stunted, and maybe there are different tree species only up here. Uh, and on the top slopes, you can see there are grasslands. Um, some trees here look like they have fresh leaves. They look so red. And some parts maybe where the soil is less, it's thin. Maybe it's drier, so you don't have the evergreen trees, or you don't even have the other evergreen trees. You might have something dry. You might have something thorny. You have to start to read the landscape. And so when you start doing this, once you approach a forest, there are actually can be many things to look at, So you don't know where to start, but usually the first thing you might see is a tree, because trees are large, they are very woody, and they're always there, they're permanently there, and you get to see it in any season. Uh, if you look a little closer around you, some smaller plants which are also slightly woody, they won't be bigger than 1 or 2 meters. Um, those are called shrubs. Uh, if you look for even smaller plants around, you might find seasonal plants like these, which are not woody. They're very soft stems. They're fleshy. And you'll only see them for some part of the year usually. So they're called herbs. We also have grasses. I think most of you should know what grasses are. You'll have tall grasses, short grasses. Bamboo is a type of grass. Vate is also a type of grass. And yeah, so you just try to look at the different plant forms that you can see around you, right? You can also have palms like this. This is a date palm, khajur, or uh, Mara as well is also a palm. You can have climbers. You can just have uh, small climbers that have just green stems, or you can also have these large climbers like this, which are woody. They are called lianas. Uh, you probably won't even see the leaves of these plants because they will be high up in the canopy. You won't even know where they start. They're just large and woody. Um, you can also have different plant groups like these ferns. Ferns kind of have feather-like leaves. These plants don't flower at all, so you'll never see them flower or fruit. But you might see other things on them. And you also have some of the smaller plant groups like mosses. They will not grow very tall, and they only grow in really moist places like moist rocks, things like that. And even here, you can actually see different types of mosses. This is probably one type, and this may be another type. You can also have other types of groups. You can have aquatic plants that are plants that grow in rivers or in lakes. So you can have different plant groups. This is just the more common plant groups. So we'll focus on the first one to start with, trees, and we'll try and understand how we can identify trees. So one of the first things you can do is just know what location you are in. Are you in a wet forest? Are you in a dry forest? Are you up on a slope? Are you near a river? Sometimes even being near a river can influence what sort of plants, what sort of trees grow around them. Having an idea of how much rainfall in your region can give you some indications. The next basic thing to do is just look at how what the shape of the tree is. Does the tree grow straight, or does it just branch out a lot? Does the trunk of the tree, is it straight? Is it very branched? Is the bark of the tree very flaky? Is there any pattern in the way the branches grow? Are they growing straight out? Are they very twisted? And next, what sort of leaves does it have? Are they big leaves, small leaves? Is there a certain color of the leaves? Is it hairy? Any other special character? Are there thorns on the plant or things like that? But more importantly, we also the type of flowers and fruit can be the most helpful in identifying plants. But most of the time, when you go to a forest, you may not see them if in other seasons. What you will definitely see are these parts. So we'll focus on just these to start with. And yeah, so we can, once you approach a forest, you can look at the way trees grow. And here, this is an image from an evergreen forest, and you can see the trees are very tall and straight. This is quite a common growth form in evergreen forests. But you will here behind it, you can see one tree which is also branching. Here's another image of a tree that is spreading more. So maybe this could be a tree which has it's a different tree. Yeah. um, then if you look at the bark, you can have different sort of patterns in the bark itself. So here, this tree has these lines, they're called fissures. They look like cracks. The tree also looks a little yellowish in color. This is calophyllum obimara. You might find this in near city, and like it's found near rivers. um, You can also have flaking bark which peels off the tree. In this tree, it's dhupa mara. It's also very almost white in color, and like this, you can have different sort of patterns on the bark itself. Sometimes the tree is smooth, like this Karimaram, Diospyros. It's a very diverse group. So these trees just they can be very smooth and straight, but then some trees you can see the wood has all these bumps and ridges on the tree. So that's called a fluted trunk. So yeah, look out for all these patterns in the tree, in the bark. Sometimes you can have arms like these thorns on the tree. So if you see something like this, is a good chance it is this species only, Xanthoxylum retsa. And um, but what's interesting is you can see these thorns are actually just on the surface. They actually break over here a little bit, and they're made of like dense, corky sort of material. It's not very hard. Then you can also have tree buttressing, and what that is in evergreen forest, trees try to grow very tall, and to grow tall, they need support. So trees form these structures on the base of the tree, which forms like support, and like it kind of forms a bit of a triangular shape at the base, and it helps the tree stay stable. So some trees do this, so that can help you identify what type of tree it could be. Some trees also have other strategies like this. Some trees make these roots from the stem like this. They're called prop roots, and as it gets older, it can help stabilize the tree. Some prop roots look like this. Some trees also produce some saps and resin. So uh, usually when there's an injury to the plant, that's when they produce the sap. It's to protect them from insects and from injury. So some trees like this Garcinia, which is if you know Kachampuli or Kokam, that genus, most of them produce some sort of sap, slightly yellowish. This species has a more yellow color of sap. If you look at nutmeg, the Rampatre, Jaikai family, they all actually have red sap, very red. And in fact, this species, Nema attenuata, is called Raktamara in Kannada because it almost bleeds when it's cut. But many trees, most trees, you might actually just find white sap. So this could be many different plants could have a white sap like this. Saps, resins are all basically some sort of exudate, something which like a liquid which comes out of a plant injury. But be careful, you don't really have to cut trees like this. This was done out of some botanical interest, but I really do not recommend you just cutting trees around your area. It can scar the trees, it can injure the trees. So if you really need to identify a plant, you're curious about something, just take one leaf and you can press the stalk of the leaf and see if any sap comes out, what color it could be, and usually that's enough. Then next you can just look at the tree, look up into the branching, look if there's any pattern. So again, this is the nutmeg tree family, the Myristica, and many trees in the forest have, in the evergreen forest, have these sort of branching where the main trunk of the tree goes straight, and then you have the branches which come out just almost horizontal, just straight from the branch or from the trunk. You can also have other trees which spread out like this. This is an Eliocarpus tree, and here you can see the branching out, and the leaves are in clusters. There are bunches of leaves like this, and each bunch of leaf is kind of positioned so it gets some sunlight. So it's like it looks like there's a pattern the way that it's branching. So just look at it. There can be other types also, but just look for if there's any shape, anything you can recognize in the branching. Next, a very important part of identifying trees is just trying to know what sort of leaves they are. Almost every tree will have a slightly different leaf shape, leaf type, and the first thing is to look at if it is a simple leaf or not. So what a simple leaf means, the last unit of the leaf of the plant is basically just a single leaf. It has only one part to it. You can see if there are any buds, any shoots here, as an indicator that this is the last unit of it. This one has this shape. This plant has all like a butterfly leaf shape, but also it has a simple leaf. Sometimes you can have compound leaves, basically where the unit of the leaf is not just one, it is more than one. So in this, the unit of the leaf has three parts to it, so it's called trifoliate, three parts. This is a pinnate leaf, which means it is straight. It has one level of like a one twig here, and then you have the leaflets on this, like your curry leaf, curry ele. It's a good example of this type of leaf structure. And then you can have a second level of it. So this is just one level of one twig and then the leaflet on it. And then if you have two levels, so you have branch one and then branch two, and on that you have the leaflets. That is called bipinnate, like your touch me not, gulmohar. There are other examples of this. And then you can also have digitate leaves, which are leaves like your hand. So each leaf is like one finger. So this is a digitate leaf. Again, don't worry too much about all these terms. Just try and remember these patterns and look for these patterns. Sometimes making sure if it's a compound leaf or not can be a little tricky, but with practice you can figure it out. Another important thing is how are the leaves arranged. So if the leaves are arranged alternate, here one leaf is on this side, one is on the other side, so they keep alternating. That's called alternate. And then sometimes you have leaves that are opposite. So wherever there is one leaf, exactly on the other side there's one more leaf. Okay, that is alternate. This is opposite. Sorry. And then this form is not as common, but there are some plants where all the leaves will arise from one part on the stem. So that's called whorl. So if you see that, it's a good chance it may be this genus itself. Actinodaphne is quite characteristic. It has this sort of leaf arrangement. There can be other arrangements as well. It's usually within one genus, within one species, you'll have the same type of leaf arrangement. Uh, Next, the leaf shape is also very important. Here you can see this leaf is, it's called an elliptic shape, where the base of the leaf is rounder and the top is more pointy. Okay, this is a very common leaf shape. It's also just it's just entire, right? Here you can see there are lobes to the leaf, and sometimes young plants of some tree species will have lobes, and when they grow big, then you see the adult leaves don't have any of these lobes that you see here. So that's quite common in many tree species. And like here's another example of a rounder leaf with this heart-shaped base. So that's called cordate. There are many more shapes. There are a lot of names for them. If you're in, I think I can share some information if you're interested about it. But idea is to remember the shapes. If you look further at a leaf, you can see that there are veins in the leaf that helps bring water and things like that to the leaf. And each species can have its own pattern. So usually most leaves will have just one main vein in the plant, like in the leaf. But some can have more like this. This is a cinnamon, dalchini plant. And this usually has three main veins like this. You can see they're quite prominent. Sometimes, like in this plant, calophyllum, all these calophyllum plants, these side veins are all they're straight, they're parallel, which means they do not touch. It's very neat. It's such a neat pattern actually. So if you just find a leaf with this sort of venation, it's a good chance it is just this genus only, right? And sometimes you can have other forms. In this is like Nerle, all your Syzygium jamuns. You can see that usually the edge of the leaf has one border vein which goes all around the edge. So that's called intramarginal. So just go look, take a leaf and just see if you can find any patterns in how the veins are. So next is leaf surface, and the best way to really know about a leaf surface is usually just to hold the leaf, to touch the leaf and feel it. Here in this, it looks green and shiny. There's almost no hair, but on the underside of the leaf, it's so white. And here's just an example of some really technical way of describing it. It's not important for you. The idea is just to remember. See, this is like a little oval leaf. The tip is pointy. It's very long stalk for each leaf, and the underside is so white. And look at these side veins. Oh, they're like almost parallel. All these ones are. So forget all the terms. Just try and remember what the pattern could be. There's so many words for the type of hair on leaves. Um, so here the hairs are very long. It's called hirsute. Doesn't matter. But basically, it's so long, and it's quite obvious. Sometimes it's small and rough. Sometimes, like here in this case, it's actually these little looks like little stars. So that's what stellate means. When you feel this, it might feel rough, but if you look at it carefully, that these little um, clusters of hair which are in a bit of a star shape. Um, yeah, and similarly, some leaves when they dry or die, they turn red. Sometimes young leaves look red, but they can all be indicators of some species. A combination of all these different things that you look at will let you identify that plant. Some leaves like in Diospyros, which are currymarams, they when their leaves dry, they turn black. So if you walk in a forest, you look up for fresh leaves, you look down for old leaves. You'll see that for some species, they might have a something characteristic like this. This is something little extra if you're interested. Some leaves, some plants they have interactions with insects. So these are called domesha, these structures. Here they're in the leaves where you see these little these holes or structures. They are basically a little place where the plants allow some insects to stay, really small insects, and the insects protect the plant from other pests, and so it's a benefit for both. Usually this is a very species specific thing, so if it's found on this this type, this color and shape might be only present in one type of tree species. Other tree species which have domatia, it looks slightly different. So if you start to find this, it can help you just by looking at some leaves. You'll have a better idea of what that tree species could be. Another example of some special traits are galls, which are plant tumors basically, and different species can have some different shapes. So mostly they might just be brown, structures like that. And this plant, Antidesma montanum, they're round like this, bigger, excuse me. um, and then this is an example of something more striking. Mostly they're not so colorful and so showy, but this is a Hopia canadensis, and that's how its gall looks. And we spoke about plants and animals interacting in some different ways. So sometimes plants can produce glands. So flowers produce nectar. So sometimes you have similar glands which are not in the flower, so just on the leaf, and they also produce some sort of sweet sugars and things like that. And in this case, it produces the sugar which the ants feed on. As you can see, this ant has filled up on some sugars from this plant, and so the ants protect the plant, and the plant feeds them. So yeah, look out for it. If you find a plant with a lot of ants on it, maybe it has these structures on the leaf. They're called leaf glands. And you can have other information from leaves. When you hold a leaf and you feel the leaf, sometimes just crush it and smell. The smell can give you a good indication of what that plant can be. If the lemon plants, anything nimbes, there are quite a few wild species from that same nimbe family, lemon family, and all of them will have these gland dots. So they are basically oil gland dots, and if you look at it, hold a leaf in the sun, you go look for a leaf, just hold it against the sunlight, and you should see these gland dots. The Nerle family, which is the for syzygiums, jamun trees, they also have these sort of things. So if you remember, the jamun also has this marginal vein, this on the edge, and it also has these dots. So together, when you put all these combinations of location, of uh, tree shape, wood, leaf, and all these factors, you can try and identify the tree better. So now that we've covered some types of structures and patterns in trees and leaves, we haven't spoken about fruits and flowers. That's a lot more detail. Let's look at some common trees of the Western Ghats and see if we can find these shapes and patterns in them. So this is Canarium strictum, which is the Dhupa Mara. Many of you might already know about this plant. The dhupa is extracted, and it's this black resin, and they use it for pujas, for purifying the air in your home. They put the resin on hot coals, and it produces a strong fragrance. So these are usually found across the Western Ghats. There may not be many trees, but you'll at least find a few trees if you're in good some evergreen forest regions. You'll have they're usually tall trees, very light bark, flaking. The leaves, when they are young, are bright red. They're very large. They're pinnate, and if you remember what pinnate means they're long with leaflets on it. All this is one leaf, just like a say curry ele, curry leaf plant. But these are pretty big leaves, and the fruit. This is the fruit that is formed, and this is the seed. And even if the tree is not flowering or fruiting, you might find some old seeds at the base of the tree, and that should help you identify this plant. But also over exploit extraction of this resin can weaken the tree, so it's something that shouldn't be done too much. Some people extract too much from these trees. Next is Alamara, which is the ficus genus. Ala just meaning milk. So like all these trees produce a lot of white sap, very sticky, and sometimes it keeps dripping. If the tree is cut, it can produce a lot of this white sap, very sticky sap. So there are many species in the wild, both from wet forests to dry forests. Um, they all have simple leaves that are alternate. So might see here alternated leaves. Um, their fruits are these figs, and they can be in different shapes because of different species. Many of these many of the trees in the ficus group have hanging roots, like banyan trees, peepal trees. Um, Sometimes you'll see them growing on top of other trees or buildings. That's another way that they like to grow. And sometimes they strangle. You might see them strangling another tree. So that's some tactics they use to grow in the forest. The fruit is usually a very good resource for wild animals, for birds. You might find if you find a tree and full fruit, just wait and look out, and you'll see a lot of different types of birds coming and feeding of them. Yeah, and if you're not sure if it's the fruit is a fig, um, they'll usually have this little dot at one point of the fruit, and if you open it, if you peel it open, there'll be lots of seeds, like hundreds of seeds inside it, and it'll be almost hollow sometimes. So that's a fig. Another plant you should know about is Artocarpus, which is Halusumara. Hebbalsu is another one. There are about 3 species actually in the wild. Mainly Halasu, which is Artocarpus heterophyllus. Um, it's sometimes in totas. It's also in the wild in some places, and the fruit comes directly on the trunk for Halasu. Hebbalsu, not so obvious like that, but the fruit is much smaller. It's also edible. They have simple leaves that have sap, white latex. So just like the ficus, they're in the same family actually. So they have some similar characteristics. One interesting thing is when the trees are young, you'll actually find the leaves are lobed. So that's why. So look out for these plants. They also have large, very thick leaves, and a lot of wildlife like it. A lot of people also like the fruit. Um, so in elephant areas, actually, people with these trees they might have some experiences. They usually know that when these trees fruit, when the halasu tree fruits, elephants usually know, and every year they may come to some particular trees. um, yeah, something to know about. Next is another interesting group of plants, trees called Myristica is the name of the genus. Basically, the nutmeg family and all the wild nutmegs, sometimes called Rampatre, Dotpatre, Jaikai. They have many names for it from different parts of the Ghat. And they have some characteristics the of the tree that can help us identify it. So if you look at their trunk, the trees, most of them may have some of these prop roots coming out. This is not the best image of prop roots, but you can imagine these sort of roots. If you look up at the branching, many of them have these straight branches coming out, horizontally coming out from the tree. Um, if they're injured, they'll have a red sap like this. The leaves are simple, alternate like that, and usually the underside of the leaf is little whitish like this. They produce large round fruits like this usually. The seed inside this is what is used as nutmeg for some species, and this outer thing is also used as a spice sometimes, and it's also for some species it's also used as a dye. um, so yeah, look out for it. There should be some Myristica trees, some plants of this species, at least in most of the evergreen sites, right? If you know about Katlekan, it is actually a Myristica swamp. So it's actually mostly filled with trees of this family, and they're found in some low-lying, very swampy places with a lot of water, and the prop roots help them stay stable. So it's a very interesting type of evergreen forest in Katlekar. You also have cinnamomum or cinnamon, dalchini, lavang patre. There are many names of it. There are many wild species of this. They usually have some very nice smells. So one of the easiest ways to identify a cinnamomum is that it has simple leaves that are opposite. They're oppositely arranged. You can see here also. And they have these three main nerves on it. Okay, that's and also if you crush the leaf, you should get a nice strong smell of cinnamon, or some of the wild species might smell slightly different, but they'll usually all have a nice strong smell. Many of these tree species are endemic to the Western Ghats, found only here. Some of them are cultivated. Cinnamomum vernum is cultivated. Another cinnamomum, they sometimes used to adulterate this, the main spice cinnamon. Yeah. Uh, and some plants you should be careful of also. Some so Holegarna, I think it's sometimes called Holegare in Kannada, or Cheru, some sort of Cheru, is a type of name from in Tamil or Malayalam. Because there are different species, they'll have something Cheru in the names. And so yeah, you have a few different types. You have some species which are very tall with really large leaves. So that's one thing to look for. Very large leaves. They're always clustered on the end of the branches. You can have some other species which have thinner, longer leaves also, smaller plants. But what's important is to look at some of the base of the leaves. You'll have these things called spurs. So remember when we spoke about special characters, this is usually special because it's not common in most plants. So these are leaf spurs. So if you see clustered leaves, large clustered leaves, and if you can see these spurs, it's a good indication it could be Holegarna. But be careful because the sap of this plant, it's actually from the mango family. So even if you pluck a mango leaf or a mango, you see some watery sap. These plants also produce some sap, but they can be a little bit corrosive. So you can get some. It can burn. It can have some allergic reactions to the skin. So here I actually tried it with Holegarna nigra, and I took photographs every few minutes, I think, and over a few hours it became like this, and after a few days it got even worse. But I do not recommend doing this because it can be very some people can have a very strong reaction to this. um, in fact, you sometimes you might even need to go to a doctor. So some local people have some different stories. Some people believe even walking under a Holegana tree is enough for you to have a strong allergic reaction. I don't think that's entirely true, but definitely you should be careful about the sap. And in fact, the sap even turns black. So when it's freshly cut after a few days, this is the same cut after a while. This turns black. So look out for these trees and be careful of their sap. Another tree to look out for is this one. Don't worry, it's got a long name. Dendrocnide sinuata, but you can just call it elephant nettle. Um, and you usually find these in wet forests, in moist parts, near sometimes near streams, where it is the soil may be moist, and it's a shrub, and they can have these large green leaves, which are elliptic, sort of eye shaped like this. They're alternate in arrangement. The wood or the bark of the tree may be lighter green, or like this gray color. It's usually not dark brown or black. That it's also quite soft, so it breaks quite easily. But be careful if you're ever doing that, because if you can see these hairs on the leaf, you'll even find them on the leaf. Here it's on the stem, on the stalk of the leaf, and they can sting you pretty badly also, and you'll remember that for a few weeks. But Yeah. So apparently elephants like to eat the bark on this plant also. I don't know how they're able to um, eat it without getting stung. But look out for it and don't get stung by this plant. Then you also have elaeocarps, a very common across. There are a few species of elaeocarps. Elaeocarpus is the genus. Rudraksha Mara is Rudraksi. They make malas out of them, make garlands, and for Hindu religious things. Um, the main way to identify some of them are they have simple leaves in clusters. Okay, and usually the old leaves start to turn red. So you'll either see it on the tree or under the tree with the fallen leaves. Also, you might see red like that. The edge of the leaves, in fact, have teeth. Like it's not smooth. It has some jagged edges. If you're lucky, you may see them flowering. They flower really nicely. They have a sweet smell. And the flower petals have these teeth on it. They look like bristles. And usually you'll find their seeds, and the seeds are really characteristic of this tree species, of this genus. So for this species here, Elaeocarpus tuberculatus is found. You'll find it near streams and in evergreen forests. They have these flat Elaeocarp Rudrak seeds. I think it's called Budraks sometimes in Kannada. But there are a few other ones where the seed may be more round or maybe pointy on either end. But they're all different types of Elaeocarpus. Um, Next, I think this is our first deciduous tree that we'll talk about. By deciduous meaning they drop their leaves in summer. So this also has simple leaves, which are clustered, but it is smooth. It doesn't have any jagged edge on the of the leaf. The leaf also, if you can see, it's got this really light brown sort of hair on it. Um, you find these trees on the edges of evergreen forests, or sometimes in slightly drier forests on slopes. You might find them on hill slopes with grasslands, which are on the edge of forests. On those edges, you might find these trees. When they drop all their leaves, after a while they flower. So you might see the whole tree without leaves, but only these flowers, and these flowers actually smell a little bit. They stink. So you may not know where the stink is coming from, but if you just smell these flowers, then you'll know. And they have these very characteristic fruit, which is in a cluster, and they can be bright red. And when they're ripe, the seeds are black. And I think some giant squirrels, they love to eat these seeds. You can also eat it. I think people eat it when they roast it. I don't think they eat it plain, just lightly roasted in some hot coals. And yeah, so it's a very common tree. You should be able to find it in many parts of the Ghats. Um, in the grasslands, there are not too many trees that you find in the grassland itself, because it's mainly grasses. But you can find this palm. It's the date palm. It's a dwarf date palm, phoenix. Don't worry about this. The name Loreri. Um, but what's important is they grow well, and even if there's fire, they seem to be adapted to fire. See here, you can see some little burnt edges, but they grow very slowly. They grow, so they can be quite old, even if they look small. A lot of the wildlife like the fruit. I think bears also like the fruit, and I think people collect it to make brooms sometime and things like that. So it is one of the palms you should be able to find. Yeah, so this is Dalbergia latifolia bete mara. Uh, this is quite a famous tree. People quite recognizable. It grows in different habitats, wet to dry. So these have compound leaves. So remember compound leaves, pinnate leaves like curry leaf, curry ele. But here the leaflets are very few. So you might have just 5 to 7 of these leaflets in one leaf, and the leaflet is round. It's very quite round. And it's famous for its wood. Here's just to look at how the wood looks inside. It's almost dark purple. um, but it's also a deciduous tree, and you should be able to ID this one. This is Nandi Mara. It's quite a famous tree for the Ghats. I mean, people can recognize it quite easily just based on this. You see the tree trunk is quite white and light in color, and the bark is peeling. So that's usually enough to try and identify this plant. You'll find it in some evergreen forests, disturbed evergreen places. You'll find it a lot more in some moist deciduous places. Um, and the leaves are simple and opposite. They're a little bit thick, the leaves. But what's interesting is when it's young, the leaves look like this. So it actually looks so different, right? It's a little, the leaves are soft. The leaves are softer. They have all these more lines on it. I mean, as the leaf looks bigger and on an adult tree, it's so smooth and shiny. But what's interesting is while the leaves are mostly opposite, sometimes it will be sub-opposite. So it's a good example of how you should look at many parts of the plant before saying, oh, these leaves are only opposite or only or alternate. So this is a little bit of both. There's an endemic tree. It's only found in the Western Ghats, and I think the timber is supposed to be very good. Nandimara timber is similar to teak in some ways. Okay, so we spoke about some trees, some trees of the Western Ghats. A few other interesting groups which at least you should know about. You may not be able to ID all of them, but at least know about them. So Kuntiana, Strobilanthus kuntiana, which is the Neelakurinji, is a really famous plant from the Western Ghats. It's from the genus Strobilanthus, and it's mainly famous because it once in 12 years they flower all together, and the entire hill slopes can look like this. And you find them a lot in these high elevation grasslands, mainly in the southern Western Ghats, Munnar and Ooty and all these sites you can find it. Not so common in Karnataka actually, this exact species, but there are many species in Strobilanthus. So that's something you should know, that it's so diverse that it's actually sometimes hard to know which species it is. And while this species flowers once in 12 years, there are other ones like in Maharashtra and things like that, which flower in once in 8 years, some are once in 4 year cycles, and some plants which flower every year. They're usually found in grasslands, in grassy slopes, but you have some species like this one which you'll find in forests or in the edges of forests. So Strobilanthus, almost all of them are shrubs, um, and they have simple leaves which are opposite, um, and they have blue flowers. But I know that's not enough always for you to identify it, but at least you know about it. Another really important group of plants is orchids. Orchids are a very fascinating plant group. They're really diverse. We have a few hundred species of orchids in the Western Ghats, and they mainly come in two types. So you'll either have them growing on top of plants or trees like that. That's called epiphytic, meaning growing on top of something. Or you can have terrestrial, which meaning they're growing on the ground. But just with few of these, you can see each of these flowers are so different, so colorful. So it attracts a lot of people. People are interested in them, and some people even like to collect them. So you should be careful about this. If you find orchids like this around your area, and people come to visit, try and be careful and don't let people collect them. Appreciate these flowers in the wild, because that's their home. Another plant group, if you're interested, is to know about is these balsams. There are so many types. There are almost 200 species in India, and even in the Western Ghats. They are herbs, so they're also they're all seasonal. You'll find them mostly in the monsoons. In the end of the monsoons, you'll see them come up. You'll find them in wet areas, in mostly on like wet soil, on rocks, on rocks with dripping water near streams, and they have so many different shapes in the flowers. Um, but what's interesting is almost all of them will have this spur behind them, and it's where their nectar is, and so that's something very interesting to look at. And they're so diverse, so many endemic species. Some are very rare, only found in some localities. So look out for them. You'll definitely have some balsams in your area. In fact, they call the genus name impatiens comes from um, the fact that the fruit is this sort of capsule, and when it's ripe and you press it, it'll burst. You might have played with it as a kid, and this is how it looks after it's burst. And so it's impatient. So that's why the name of that plant is called impatiens. Um, but so we spoke about a lot of nice plants in the Western Ghats. There are some plants which are a bit damaging to our forests and ecosystems. So Lantana camara is one of the most serious invasive plants. Exotic just means it's not from India, it's come from some other part of the world. So you can have exotic plants from somewhere else that are growing here, but sometimes they become invasive, meaning they try to invade into forests, they take over parts of the forest which would have been covered by native plants. So here you can see the lantana has covered this whole forest floor, and it's even climbing on top of these trees. So it's really destroyed this forest, and it can be quite a problem. This is only one invasive plant. There are many more. In fact, if you look at the marigold family, there are many plants within this family. Don't worry about all these names. You'll see them at some point, these plants. But just to know that there are some plants that are invasive, and you'll mainly see them on the edges of forests, or where villages are next to forests, where wherever people are, there's a little more disturbance to the forest, and that's where you might see more of these type of plants. Okay, so to really conclude, to summarize what we have tried to learn, is the main objective for you is to try and build a picture of each plant. Okay, so where does the specific type of plant grow? Does it like to grow in a wet place, in a dry place? Does it grow next to a river? Does it grow on top of a betta, on a slope? How do the leaves look? Are they big? Are they small? When does it flower? Does it have some season? Does it flower mostly in February, March, or does it flower at some other time? How do the fruit look? Can you eat the fruit? Is it a big fruit? Is it a small fruit? Have you seen any animals on it? So if it's a ficus, alamara, you'll see a lot of birds and things like that. So try and figure out how plants and animals are interacting. It's always interesting to know how these things take place. Uh, Find out what the local names are. There's so many local names. It's really hard to keep track of it for me. I'm not very good with local names, because there's just so many. Within Karnataka only, there can be many names in Kannada for the same tree species, even for uses. And try and take photographs. Try and find some way to record your observations, because that's the best way to remember with so many plants. Most of you should have phones, and phone cameras are quite good nowadays. You can take some photos at least, and make some notes. And the next step is when to start identifying patterns at a larger scale. So if you found a few different ficus trees, then you can try to see if there's some pattern between all of them. So you start understanding what a genus level patterns are. If it's cinnamon or any other plant, you try to see these patterns, and you can even start figuring out family level patterns. Okay, so that's how you keep learning and growing more with the more plants you start to learn. But it's always important to have some best practices, some ethics. You should be responsible when you enter forests. So don't just pluck flowers. When you see a nice flower, you might want to pluck it, but don't. It's always, it'll damage the forest. Many plants grow slowly, so you have to be responsible. Don't cut plants needlessly. You might enter the forest with a katti, so don't just swing it everywhere. Sometimes you may need to clear a path, but most of the time you really don't have to. If you keep cutting trees the same place to mark trails, you can create scars on the tree. It can weaken the tree. They can get diseases from that. Uh, Another important thing is collection from the forest. So it's best to not take anything from the forest. If there are orchids, and if you have guests who are interested in orchids and somebody wants to take some plant home, that's a good example where you should tell them that, hey, you've come to the forest, come appreciate it here, but don't take anything back from the forest. And lastly, be careful what you eat. You may find edible fruits in the forest. You can find jackfruit, you can find syzygium, nerles, you can find wild mangoes and things that you can eat. But if you really only do that if you're sure. Don't let anybody eat something that, or you also don't eat anything if you are not sure what it is. Some plants can be not good for you to eat. Um, if you're serious, these are just some further some books and some sources if you're interested. It's usually all these books are a little more technical, so there's a lot more terms and names. But as and when you learn more, at some point, if you're interested, you can try getting these books. um, Maybe this one is for starters, but it will take some practice to learn these. But what I definitely recommend is trying some of these websites. So flowersofindia.net is a very popular website. It also has an app. So it's a free app you can download and put on your phone. It doesn't need internet to search. You can search by scientific name or genus, and sometimes local names, but the local name things don't search very well sometimes because of the spelling differences. So you should get some photos, some information about plants there. These are the other ones you can try. This is a little more technical, so you may not like this. I don't know if you're interested in this source, but definitely try this one, Biotic. It is a very nice resource. Um, you can try this link. You can open this link where there's a list of all the plants that they have information on. They also have an app, and we'll just talk about it a little bit. If you want, you can use this link here, and it'll open up this application page. If you want, you can even download the software or this app on your phone, but you can also try it directly on the internet from this link below. And just like we spoke about, we tried to break down the plant into different parts. You can do the same thing here and click it. There are a lot of images you can click and say, I saw this type of leaf. It's a simple leaf, or if it's a compound leaf, how big was it? How many leaflets were it? What is the tip shape? What is the bottom shape? What is the edge shape? Did you see those gland dots? Did you see how was these venation? Was it what sort of pattern was it? Was there any latex? Was there any sap when you cut? When it was cut, or was it buttressing? So you can you can search through about 500 tree species of the Western Ghats, which is why it's a really useful source. So, but yeah, you can spend some time on it. It's a good experience. And also says you can click search here. So here's an example of what Canarium strictum looks like. This is the species page for that. So it gives you the botanical name, the family, and also whatever it's some common names. You may not have all the common names, but something may be there. And what the really useful thing is that you have images of different parts of the plant. So you have young leaves, you have the stem, you have mature leaves which are darker green, you have the resin, dry, you have different parts, the flowers, the fruit, and then you have all these descriptions and like the same format like we were trying to learn. The what sort of location actually is kind of meant written a little below. But is it a tall tree? It says it buttresses, it grows up to 30 meters. The bark can have lenticels, which are these dots, and each of these green things, the green words, if you click on them, it will actually give you a description of what that term means. So it's a really nice way to learn. And you can also choose in different languages. If you want to read this whole thing in Kannada, you can also try and do that. But there's a lot of description, and there's a lot of plants, as I said, 500 plants in this. So you should spend some time, but it's a very, very useful thing to learn.